This is actually a tombstone that's completely submerged in water. There's another one right here that I can't even make out myself. Now, one of the problems that I found while we were trying to pick up a couple of these plastic bags is that these bushes have very sharp thorns on them, and even when you try to get the bags away, cleanup is very, very difficult.
Just a few hours ago, hundreds of people packed this gymnasium here at Picacho Middle School for the chance to hear Bill Clinton speak.
This was a very brief pit stop for Governor Mike Pence. As you can see, as quickly as everything went up, it's already being taken down. Right now, Indiana and Kentucky are both going for Donald Trump. Vermont is going for Hillary Clinton. Behind me is one of a few access points that construction workers use to get to the other side of that border fence in order to work on the highway. He was kind of going by pretty quickly in that papal car. I know a lot of them are going to be sticking around, kind of hoping that once he comes out after about 90 minutes or so of lunch and rest, that they'll be able to, I don't know, maybe shake his hand, maybe get a kiss, maybe get a blessing, we don't know. So I figured I'd try one out for myself to see if I have any luck tonight. Let's see. There you go.
Hello, how are you doing?
After a roundtable discussion with the Borderplex Alliance today, Senator Ted Cruz laid out 4 things he believes could stimulate the Texas economy.
If we deliver on those 4 priorities, Obamacare, tax reform, regulatory reform in the Supreme Court, 2017 will be an epic blockbuster year. This could be the most productive Congress in decades.
But nowhere on that list was mention of immigration reform or President Trump's plan to build a border wall. So we asked.
I have long supported a border wall.
Then I asked Senator Cruz about the economic implications the border wall could have on trade with Mexico.
A lot of people say that the border wall is going to help, but people here in El Paso are very critical about that and what it's going to do to trade with Mexico.
Not once, but twice.
Do you think there's any downfalls to the border wall in terms of the message it sends to Mexico and trade?
And twice, Senator Cruz dodged the question.
Walls work. Countries all over the world have walls on their borders.
Cruz claims a wall already exists.
You have wall constructed here in El Paso that helps keep El Paso safe.
But he didn't specify what he meant. Even without a wall, Cruz said illegal immigration is down.
In just the first few months of this administration, illegal immigration has dropped over 60%.
And he's hoping for new ways to work with Mexico on trade.
What I hope will happen in the renegotiation of NAFTA is that the administration will focus on opening foreign markets, opening Mexican markets.
We're going to have to take a really good look at budget time and make some very hard decisions.
Therapy centers in Texas are bracing for 2 rounds of Medicaid cuts.
We're not able to expand it at this time.
First, on the state side, $350 million was slashed from Medicaid funding for speech, physical, and occupational therapies.
We're losing anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 a month right now because of the 25% cut that went into effect in December.
But a second round of cuts could also come, this time from the federal government.
It's just going to make it that much more challenging for agencies like ours.
According to a report by the Congressional Budget Office, the Republican health care plan could cut $800 billion from Medicaid over the next 10 years. For parents like Laura Villegas, the cuts could mean her children won't be able to attend therapy sessions.
My first child was nonverbal until age 9.
She has 2 children in therapy. Before,
the only way I was able to tell if my child was sick is that he would lay in bed for the whole day.
These days,
my child, for example, learned to tell me how he was feeling through pictures.
Laura already works more to get her boys the help they need.
I'm willing to do anything, to work overtime, to have 2 jobs, which is what I'm doing right now.
Even going across the border for some services.
My child is making a big improvement. Of course, that's out of pocket.
But the cuts could hurt her family even more, because along with her sons being patients here,
I really like working here.
Laura is also an employee.
If they keep cutting the services, of course, we're going to get to a point where we're going to get laid off.
Velarde says no layoffs are planned, but admits anything is possible.
If we see more cuts coming from Washington because of what's happening, that would likely be a probability.
Leaving Laura's family and so many others living in uncertainty.
It would hurt a lot to leave.
Polls closed just a little bit less than an hour ago here in El Paso County and for all the states that were in the Mountain Time Zone. And already we're starting to see some of those numbers pop up on the El Paso County elections. We want to warn you, these are early voting numbers at this point, but this is what we're seeing so far. Registered voters, there's about 427,000 registered voters in El Paso County. Turnout right now is hanging at about 34.83% total. meaning that a little bit less than 150,000 people actually cast their ballots. We're starting to get a better idea of how El Paso County voters are voting in national, statewide, and local elections. So let's go ahead and first of all take a closer look at the national level. This is the number of people in these early voting numbers who voted straight ticket. That was one of the election options that they had when they headed to the polls. Democrats, 75% of people voted straight ticket Democrat. That's very typical for El Paso County. We're going to go ahead and take a look now at the presidential election. Obviously, a lot of eyes are on the presidential election. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump going neck to neck. But Hillary Clinton has a commanding lead in El Paso County with 69% of the vote so far. Donald Trump is polling at about 25.75%. And then you've got some write-in candidates. Gary Johnson is polling at 3.12%. The interesting thing about Gary Johnson is if he can poll 5% nationally, his party, the Libertarian Party, would be considered a minor political party, which is a huge victory for the Libertarian Party. Let's go ahead now and take a look at some of the local elections. First things first, we've got the El Paso ISD bond. Right now, it's looking very favorable for that bond, but it is a very close race in these preliminary polls. We've got 52.54% of people saying that they're for it and about 47.46% saying they're against it. This is a historic size when it comes for this poll, so we're keeping a very close eye on that. Beto O'Rourke is winning his election. He said that he might be running for Senate in 2020, so we're keeping a close eye on that. This is an interesting one. Will Hurd right now is not winning in El Paso County. His contender, Democratic contender Pete Gallego, is actually winning 81.87%. Very interesting. We're going to have to see if Will Hurd can actually hold on to his seat. And then finally, Sheriff Richard Wiles is going ahead, and he's got 64.62% of the vote. We're going to be keeping an eye on all of these. Coming back to you.
You can mark today as the day that Texas is drawing a line in the sand and saying no.
It's the bill that has the borderland buzzing.
Privacy and safety of Texans is our first priority, not political correctness.
Today, Texas lawmakers filed a bill that would ban transgender people from using the bathroom of their choosing.
When you're talking about transgender, you get into a real hot topic.
This bill has been as controversial as it is divisive.
The bathroom law is nonsense to me. It's total nonsense.
I agree with the bill. I would vote in favor of it.
Around El Paso, that division couldn't be more clear.
I feel like it shouldn't matter.
Someone making a change, a lifestyle change, I don't see why they should impose that change on me or my family or anybody else.
About half the people we spoke with say they agree with the bill.
I think that we need to go back to normalcy and common sense, which is a man goes in the man's bathroom and a woman goes in the women's bathroom.
As a female, if I'm using the restroom and I have someone next to me that hasn't removed their male parts, I would feel not safe. I'd feel they have a weapon and they can use it against me.
The other half said it shouldn't matter which bathroom a person wants to use.
I think that people should have the right to use facilities as they need them.
I feel like it shouldn't matter about anything and everybody's equal.
Would it make you uncomfortable for somebody who is transgender to be in the bathroom with you?
Well, if it's a guy that says he's a girl and it's obviously a man and he's dressed up like a woman, sure.
And you wouldn't be uncomfortable?
No, not at all.
I would not feel comfortable at all.
If he was comfortable with it, I guess no. I mean, if they're comfortable with it, I'm just there to do my business.
On a windy Friday, in front of about 100 supporters, Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke announced that change is in the air.
I'm running to represent the great state of Texas in the U.S. Senate.
The third-term congressman will have to take on Ted Cruz in 2018 if he wants a shot at the Senate.
This is definitely not going to be an easy campaign. And we're running against someone who basically, for the last 4 years, almost successfully used his position in the Senate to run for president.
And already, O'Rourke is promising that his campaign will be different, if not a little unconventional. First, he's promised not to take corporate money.
Conventionally speaking, this isn't a really smart move on my part.
O'Rourke said he wants Texans to know that he's serving them, not corporate interests.
I depend on, I'm inspired by, I'm counting on you. not anyone else.
But that wasn't his only radical proposal. He also promised not to become a career politician.
And I'll also voluntarily limit myself to no more than 2 terms in the Senate because I believe in Texas.
The junior congressman acknowledged the uphill battle he'll have to face as a Democrat running in a traditionally red state.
I don't subscribe to the notion that this is a red state or that it can become a blue state or that maybe today it is a purple state. People are sick of that. They don't see themselves in color.
If he wins, O'Rourke would be the first person from El Paso to ever win a Senate seat. But he says the city has already overcome greater odds.
This is a community of underdogs who, against the longest of odds, have come out on top and not just changed this community, not just changed this state, but have changed this country and this world for the better.
With the sun shining overhead and the crowd cheering, O'Rourke ended his speech by promising that brighter times are ahead.
So let me ask you, do you want to do this? Do you want to win in 2018? Are you with me? Because I'm with you. Let's do this.
Any El Paso parent or caregiver can tell you, children can be a handful.
I mean, you can't leave them for no more than 2 seconds because they're very quick.
When parents take their kids to school each day, they expect teachers to be at the top of their game.
You constantly have to be vigilant.
But after a Las Cruces teacher was arrested for child abuse and possession this week, we wanted to find out about drug testing policies for schools. So we started on the state level.
There is no state policy or requirement on drug testing school district employees.
That's Dieta Culbertson with the Texas Education Agency. She says the TEA doesn't have the authority to require those types of tests.
That is a decision that's based at the local level.
The same is true in New Mexico. The state's public education department says, quote, drug testing requirements are up to districts and vary accordingly. So we went to the districts. Of those that responded, only 1 requires new teachers to take a drug test. That's Canutillo ISD.
I'm very shocked. I did not know that. Honestly, I thought it was a requirement.
It's very surprising.
Parents we spoke with had no idea this wasn't a requirement.
I mean, you don't know if the teachers are coming with the right set of mind, because you don't know if they're doing drugs or not, because you're not even testing them.
And several said they'd like these tests to be routine.
Should be able to, of course, be able to pass a drug test if you're going to be around kids every day.
It's definitely worth it. It's children's lives we're talking about here.
But for parents who are worried,
they need to contact the local administration or their local school board members and voice those concerns.
What I want to see is an immigration reform policy which unites families.
Taking a stand on immigration reform, Senator Bernie Sanders sits down with KFOX 14 before a rally in Vado today to explain what he plans to do within the first 100 days of winning the White House.
I do believe that we need comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship.
Along with the path to citizenship, the Vermont senator wants to get rid of detention centers, modernize the visa system, allow undocumented immigrants to buy health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, and even do away with some of President Obama's current policies.
I am against the president's deportation policies.
A reform plan that will inevitably cost quite a bit. But Sanders says he knows where all that money will come from.
Many of the wealthiest people and the largest corporations are not by any means paying their fair share of taxes. So when you have the 20 wealthiest people in this country owning more wealth than the bottom 150 million, in my view, it is appropriate to ask the wealthy to start paying their fair share.
Though he hasn't always pushed for immigration reform. In 2007, he voted against a reform bill despite widespread support from Democrats, something rival Hillary Clinton has pointed out time and again in debates. Still, Sanders says his message is clear, and he isn't afraid to make a few enemies if it means doing what is right.
I will use whatever powers I have, executive powers within the office of the president, to make the situation better.
And that's kind of a controversial stance. I mean, President Obama really didn't start using his executive orders until the last kind of year.
You're right. It is controversial, but it has to be taken within the context of a Republican Party which has been incredibly obstructionist. So very few people deny that the current immigration system is broken. And yet we have Republicans not only refusing to take up the issue, but are being incredibly obstructionist in so many ways. And if Congress does not do it, the only alternative is that the president uses the legal powers that he has in order to do the best that he can.
By now, El Paso drivers are used to this sight, orange barrels and construction equipment. But road work isn't only happening on this side of the border fence.
Bridge 17 is about 1.3 miles long, and it's super interesting because it's on the other side of the border fence.
Right there. Did you see it? Here, watch again. That curve in the right part of your screen is Bridge 17, and it goes right over the border fence.
This is a truly unique situation.
Which is why Paisano drivers have started to see these bridge columns go up on the other side.
So we've completed over 90 columns since January.
But just because the bridge veers over the border fence, that doesn't mean you'll need a passport.
The international boundary is actually the Rio Grande. This does not go into or over the Rio Grande.
Still, this construction took quite a bit of coordination.
It deals with the International Boundary and Water Commission. So there's multiple agencies involved, CBP.
And even though Cruz had to cut into part of the fence to make construction possible, TxDOT says that doesn't mean there's a security gap.
We do have a guard stationed at each access point to make sure that there's not somebody coming across the border.
But once the project is done, TxDOT says this drive will truly be one of a kind.
It really is going to be, I think, one of the more exciting bits of roadway one can drive when you veer out over the levee like that.
In the history of the world, the Middle East, all they've ever known is war and chaos.
Maynard Haddad loves three things in this world: the car wash he owns, the UTEP miners, and his country.
I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of being a Syrian, but I'm an American first above everything else.
He's a straight shooting, leave the pleasantries at the door kind of guy.
I don't care about the news, and I don't care about the Middle East.
But Maynard does have connections there. His father immigrated to the U.S. from Syria in the 1920s.
My dad came over here. He was a teenager, probably 14, maybe 15 years old, with two younger brothers. They were orphans.
And ever since they became citizens, they put America first.
They want to get out of there. I mean, there's nothing there.
Which brings us back to Maynard and his love for this country.
For you, it's so interesting because you're first-generation American, but you bleed red, white, and blue.
You betcha.
Yeah?
Hell yeah, man.
He says he doesn't really care about what's happening in Syria.
How many people have a reason to be connected over there? Not very many. So, and if you don't have relatives over there, what do you care?
But he understands why his country is getting involved.
I don't think they have any choice.
As for Maynard, he's just focused on enjoying all of the freedoms this country has provided him.
All these people that don't appreciate our country, I feel sorry for them. But we're so blessed.